Hey everybody, welcome back. And if you're new here, welcome to you. Today we're going to take a tour around the garden and see what we have growing and what is blooming so beautifully in July. It's been a while since I've done a garden tour, so I'm really excited to show you what we have growing because we've been planting a lot over the past 2 months and everything is really kind of popping right now, especially with the summer heat and the beautiful sun and the great weather that we've been having here in Southern California. So I'm really excited. So let's get started, and let's start with this flower bed that I have right here. And this is one of the newest things that I've planted in the yard. And I love how it's turned out. These really beautiful sun patience are growing so nicely. And it seems like after I planted them, that's when they really started to take off. I mean, the growth in these have been a lot, actually, and they've definitely put on more blooms. And I love that electric pink. I was thinking they were going to be a little bit softer in their pink color because to me, it feels like, or it seems like, they've really kind of intensified their color since they've been planted in the ground. And I think that's just because they're really happy here. And so this was a definite great choice to put in this narrow bed right here. And I think it really just showcases these tower boxwoods like I intended it to do when I first planted them. I also have a really nice caladium that came back this year, and it seemed like once we hit that nice hot weather and we've been a little bit more humid than usual here, it seems to really love that, and so it's doing really well. And I couldn't bring myself to pull that one out because I mean it's such a nice plant, and if it's going to come back like a perennial, which most of them are, then we're going to keep it for sure. So this is all looking great, and that's really nice because when you pan back and you see this flower bed here with the other things that I have going on the other side, we'll get to those, it really does create a nice cohesive look over on this side of the house. So let's talk about these really nice double yellow super bells, and they have been blooming all season since the early spring. There was a little bit of a lull in the wintertime because our weather was a lot cooler, but just like everything else in our garden, it's really loving the sunlight and the heat and everything like that. And it's about 2 feet, a little over 2 feet long. The hanging basket is up here, and it's just really nice, and the blooms wrap around the entire hanging basket, which is really neat. There's only 2 plants in here, which all of this bloom power is from 2 plants, which is amazing to think about. And the only thing that I do with this really is, I haven't trimmed it back yet, but the only thing that I really do with this is give it water soluble every 1 to 2 weeks. I try to do every week, but sometimes we get busy. Last week we're on vacation. I skipped a dosage of the fertilizer, but it doesn't miss a beat. It keeps on blooming like this, and I love the yellow color in the yard because it just kind of like pops against the pink down here in the flower bed and everything else that we have going on in our yard, which is great. It's on drip, so it waters every day for about 10 minutes. There's a spray drip for hanging baskets that I picked up from Rainbird. You can pick those up at Lowe's, and the drip goes along my eaves here and it comes down on the chain to the hanging basket, so it's kind of hidden. You don't really see it unless you're really looking for it. And yeah, it waters 10 minutes every day, and then I just come with that fertilizer, and that's it. I have not trimmed this back, and look at this, is just so fantastic. I love how dense it is too. You know, every super bells or caldecott that I've grown grows differently depending on the color and the type, and this was new, I think last year, new variety for proven winners anyways. And I was really excited because I love how the blooms look in comparison to single blooms, which I love as well. But these kind of have like a double impatience look or a little rosette look to them. And when it is in full bloom, like believe it or not, this could be even more dense in bloom, and it looks like it's about to do that. Then it's just a solid presence. And the growth habit of the branching is also really dense and very healthy. So I love that for sure. So double yellow super bells. All right, now on to our self-watering container. It's in the shade right now, but it's just received about 6 hours of sun. And even though I just planted this a little over 2 weeks ago, it's doing great. The coleus is just loving life right here. And the really cool brand new cherry burst verbena is in full bloom. I mean, it is really taken off, and it loves the fact that it doesn't go dry, which is what I was having a problem with when they were in their can. So I was so glad to get them planted. And I think these 2 varieties together with the coleus is a really nice contrast, because the leaves of the coleus really is the outer rim of the leaves, or the edging is the same color of the leaves on the cherry burst, which is it kind of ties it all together. And it's going to be cool to see those different textures like I was talking about when I planted these originally. One thing that I forgot to talk about when I planted these in that original video is I love having a self-watering container that I can put on top of my air conditioning unit to hide it, because unlike regular containers that will leach and drip out, it's not good to have the water sitting on top of your metal air conditioning unit because eventually it can rust it out. But the great thing about this, if I hit it just right, it'll fill the reservoir on the very bottom and I won't have any overflow. There won't be any water. It'll be completely dry, and it's, basically managing it itself, which doesn't lead to rust from that runoff from the water. So beautiful plant, no mess, stays moist for days, low maintenance. Love that. And it serves another purpose. It's concealing this ugly air conditioning unit, which is always good. Now, other than the self-watering container, I have that other self-watering container that I had spray painted black to match the one that's on top of the air conditioning unit, and planted some matching plants to kind of tie in this whole area. I planted that really nice chocolate drop coleus that we can find in this self-watering container, in addition to the really nice, electric pink sun patients that are over there with the tower boxwoods on that narrow bed. And then I also tucked in a little bit of sweet alyssum on either side. That lobularia is going to be really nice, and that'll give me a little white element to kind of break up the dark foliage. And it'll also give me another texture because those blooms are really, really tiny, and they're a lot more delicate than the huge blooms that are on the sun patient right there. And again, this area is really, really interesting because we have some of our air conditioning unit wires and some of the electrical back here along with our plumbing. So I don't, even though this is a flower bed right here, I don't want to put things in the ground here, because if they need to service this area, I don't want to have the plants trampled. So I put things in containers. Like I have this in a container right here, which this is amaryllis that I replanted a couple years ago, and it blooms once a year, but in the meantime it gives this really nice like sword-like foliage here. And I have that hydrangea that I need to move because now that we're getting a lot more sun, it's not as happy and it's kind of burning a little bit, so I'm going to move that to the other side of the house where it's in shade a lot more. In the meantime, you have flowers here, which is great. But I love how it matches. This is kind of like a square container. This is more rectangular shape, and it kind of brings the whole area together with the hanging basket that's above there. It's looking really, really nice, and it's kind of in between a bloom cycle right now, but there's tons, hundreds of buds on those pink super bells, along with the really nice saffron finch, which is a petunia, super petunia that is new for this year, and it's doing great as well. So while that gets established and in the middle of its blooming, although it looks really pretty right now, I can only imagine when everything is really popping right here, which this already is, it's going to look really great. Now behind me here, I have those containers that I had purchased from Aldi with the double up pink begonia and more of the double yellow super bells that I have in that hanging basket over there. And they just love this spot. I'm really happy with this container because the pink and the yellow, again, we see, which is a repeating theme, and the double yellow super bells together looking great. I mean, beautiful specimen of a plant, and I love how it's up high on that pedestal, which makes our porch space look a lot better. Okay, let's get to this area. We're going to talk about this hanging basket in a second, but before we do, I love this little container. I purchased this small dwarf boxwood a couple years ago, actually 4 years ago now. I've trimmed it back only once. It's very slow growing, and it's just absolutely adorable in a small pot or container like this. You could plant these in landscape as well, but in this application, it's really been happy in this container. I'll probably come through in a couple days and tighten it up a little bit and shear off some of those stems that are outside of the main spherical shape to tighten it up a little bit, but love it for sure. It's extremely hardy too. And the alyssum that's in front is a volunteer plant that had seeded itself from a hanging basket that was above it. So that is a bonus. And I love the smell of it. I mean, this lobularia is very delicate and lavender, so a bonus for sure. Okay, so let's talk about this container. This is the Pink Lemonade Magic from Proven Winners, and I planted this probably 2.5 years ago. This is its second season and a half, and really interesting plant, beautifully dense blooms. A couple of weeks ago, it was in its heyday and it was just absolutely full and covered. And then about a week ago, some of the branches started dying off. And I think what's happened in here is one of the plants, that's because there's only two in here, has died. So it's slowly kind of, falling to it's succumbing to its age, I think. And this is what they do. Sometimes they just fizzle out. So one of the plants is definitely on its way out and the other one's still blooming beautifully. I mean, if you get up close to it, it's really kind of a mess. I might try to come through and clear out some of those dead branching so the one that's healthy in there can kind of take over those spots. But I haven't really decided what I'm going to do yet. But getting 2 seasons out of it is amazing. And it still looks beautiful to me. I mean, it's full of blooms. If one thing dies like that, then there's always an opportunity for something new to go in its spot. And I think that's what I really like about, one of the things I really like about gardening is, it's always changing, not only through the seasons, but from week to week or even day to day. And so, I'm not expecting for this to last forever. And if that happens now, there's always something I can do about it in the meantime. So it's going to be pretty for a while. I probably won't get to this for a couple of weeks, but we'll see how it does, and then I'll give you an update soon. So let's go over to this side, which is really exciting. Okay, so this area of the yard has been probably one of the first things that I started working on this spring, and I think it looks really nice. It turned out great. I planted those stormburst verbena underneath the boxwoods that I had sheared way back. If you remember from a couple months ago, they were huge, giant boxwoods, and we cut them way back to give them a really nice reset. And I think we've been talking, and we're probably going to, once they are able to be sheared, we're going to shape them into squares and then keep the idea of underplanting them with something pretty, like these really beautiful verbena. I mean, they have just gone crazy. They were so small just maybe 2 months ago, and now they're encroaching onto the patio area, which is fine because it's full of color and it kind of softens the edge there, which I like a lot. And so those are doing great. These are doing great. I also added a little bit of the petite pink Gara in the back there, and they're kind of like showing their little blooms through there. They're in between a bloom cycle right now, but they've been really pretty on both sides. I think this verbena is going to overtake the Gara in a little bit, but I can kind of trim it back to tame it down a little bit. But I think that extra color and texture in between everything is really nice. And then of course we have the pink super bells and the yellow super bells right behind, which these are new to this part of the garden because these were huge before and it covered this whole area right here. So it was really nice to add 2 more of the wall containers in addition to the ones that are behind me that we'll get to in just a second. All right, and then the really pretty Chrysler Imperial Rose is in its second bloom cycle, and it looks really nice. Kind of keeping an eye on this to make sure that I don't have any of those pests like aphids attacking it. And I did spray with some Rose RX, and since I've done that, I haven't had any problems. So we have some corn here. Ben has been planting up his garden. We, a couple of weeks ago, had harvested some carrots. We've been harvesting cucumbers. He planted this corn about a month ago. It's about half the size of what it will be. It's probably going to be up to here very soon. It's growing really fast, and the hotter it gets, the better it does. It's like, I don't know, it seems like it's on speed growth cycle right now, because every day I come out, I swear it's grown a foot. Probably not, but it seems like it. Then we have our super bells there. I have 1 yellow left in this pot. These have been in here a while. Like I said, they do fizzle out. So I've had a double twilight that fizzled out, and then another yellow on the other side, but this one's doing great. And I don't know why they fizzle out, but I think they just get old and tired, and that's okay. It still looks pretty. I might turn this boxwood just a little bit so that the super bells is facing this way where everybody can see, but for now, it's okay. Okay, so I had Ben come over on this side so you could have a better view of the garden. We love gardening produce for sure. Not just flowers, but produce, something that's functional and that is really a great space to produce things that we can use in our everyday cooking. So we have these gorgeous romaine lettuce here that need to be picked. Some of them are bolting. That's going to be just fine. We're going to cut those today actually and use those, but we're going to try to utilize this in the near future. And this variety, I'm not even sure which one it is, but we keep growing it because we have a lot of seeds for that, and it is fantastic. Slow to bolt, extremely green, disease resistant, it doesn't get harmed by a lot of pests, and it's a lot of fun to grow for sure. So back here we have 3 different types of peppers. We have a yellow banana pepper, we have a jalapeno, and then a orange bell pepper. And they're growing great, but what we've done to help them grow a little bit more sturdy and full is when they start to set fruit at this small size, we've been cutting off the fruit so that it allows the strength into the plant so that it can become a larger plant and set on more fruit in the end. If we allow them to start setting fruit at such a small size, then the energy from the plant will go to producing and ripening that fruit, and it'll kind of stunt the growth. And we don't want that. We want it to become really full and then full of fruit later on down the road. It's kind of hard to think about cutting fruit off early and not even using it, but it does help it in the long term. So we've been doing that. We also have a different type of, I believe it's a Yukon Gold potato down here that we've had planted, and we had enough potatoes to plant the back half of this 4x4 raised bed. And in order to make sure that they didn't lean forward and take or encroach upon the front so we could plant something else down here, we just put a simple cage around that, and that kind of keeps them upright until they're ready to be pulled. We're waiting for them to bloom and to yellow a little bit, and then that's the sign that we look for before we harvest them. So that's coming soon. I see a little bit of bloom starting to set on there, so it won't be long. And then we have this small sized cucumber here that's just setting on fruit like you would not believe. We have 2 actual plants in here set on this wire teepee that I purchased from Lowe's, and it is absolutely super productive. We've been giving away cucumbers to our neighbors, to my mom, to my mother-in-law. Ben's taken it to his work, and they've enjoyed that, and it's still full of fruit. So we can't seem to make a dent in this thing, but I know that our neighbors are going to really appreciate it when we harvest it again in the near future. And then as you can see, these yellow and pink super bells along the wall really kind of give it a beautiful hint of color, or a splash of color, as we grow the garden down below. I love that vertical interest there with color and annuals, while we utilize the space on the bottom to grow our produce that we're going to be using each season, actually. So we have some tomatoes here that we had started from seed. Ben started these from seed, and then he bumped them up into larger containers that we had left over from our annuals. And they are doing great, ready for sure to be planted. Some of these are going to my mom's house in the near future, probably in a couple of weeks, or actually next week probably. There is I believe a beefsteak in there. There is a cherry tomato, and then a sweet cherry. And then the other ones we'll probably just give to our neighbors, because we have a couple people around here that love to garden. So that'll be exciting. Oh, we have some of our lavender that's spilled over. I can't wait to get these in the ground. This is an English lavender, and I've been wanting to try lavender for a long time. We have the perfect climate for it. It's hot, it gets dry. They love that. They love the sun, full sun all day long. And they've been doing great in their cans. I actually was on vacation a week ago and picked that up in Solvang, California, of all places. I found it there, so I thought that would be great to bring home. All right, in this back corner, our Bidens are kind of at a lull. There's a little bit of that yellow splash in there, and I don't know if they've had some damage from some bugs, but it looks like they're about ready to bloom again. But it's been a while. I don't know if it's because of excessive heat, but it's a trial plant for us. We haven't ever grown them before. I have to come through and weed this out a little bit, but I think they're going to do fine. I'm going to leave them in here a little while longer, and if they just can't produce, then I'm going to pull them probably. But the scaevola, the blue scaevola, is just like beautiful. It's full of pollinators most of the time, and that purple color is really, really nice. I would definitely plant that down there again. And it seems to love the heat. It's not phased by anything. It doesn't get any bugs. It's very sturdy. Really, really nice annual to try out in a sunny place. Our roses are coming back into their second bloom. This is that really pretty pink iceberg rose, and then we have the burgundy iceberg rose over here, and the Benjamin Britten rose is right about ready to bloom. It's setting on its buds. Probably when these are done, that will start blooming, so we'll always have some rose interest in the back here. And then of course we have our yellow and pink super bells, the last 2 on the wall over here above the boxwood and the roses. Love how this has all turned out. I think that next year I will probably come through again and put some of the same color, because I really do like the purple and the yellow together, in contrast to what I have going on in our roses, our rose bed here. And I had some gladiolas that were really, really insanely tight together, and they had multiplied and pushed each other up, and they were kind of flopping all over the place. So I took them out. I'm going to divide those and then replant them there, and probably give some bulbs away, because they are super healthy. They're huge, and it was really interesting to see how they have multiplied in the last 2 years that they've been back here. This is a relatively new bed. I've only had it back here for 2 years, and it's really fun to see those gladiolas bloom every spring. And it's right about the time that I plant the annuals down below. So there's a lot of interest back here. It's like a real huge splash of color. So let's take a look at what we have growing on in our container, I like to say container garden, near the garage. All right, now for this boxwood in this container, the super bells, none of them have fizzled out. They're just as old as the other one on the other side. And for some reason, those had a more difficult time lasting as long as these, but they are old, but they look beautiful. The double twilight with the double yellow on both sides. What a beautiful container. I love underplanting greenery like this, especially evergreen shrubs like the boxwoods. And this probably could use a little bit of a cleanup and tightening up, but I'm going to let it grow out just a little bit, because it was just a couple months ago that I had trimmed it back. So I really am pleased with how long these have lasted, because it looks terrific in the yard. All right, so moving on to our sunflare rose. It's in its second bloom cycle, looking beautiful, tons of color. I had a little bit of an issue with some, I believe it was like a grasshopper, some kind of green grasshopper, and I was seeing a little bit of damage, but I didn't have to do anything, and it seems to have stopped. So I was really worried for a second, because I know they like to eat some of the leaves and the buds for sure, but it hasn't been around since, and I was glad to know that, because I was really looking forward to having this really nice, pretty show of color behind the newly planted containers here with the ridiculous coleus and the cherry drop coleus. I mean, they've been in here a week and a half, and they're doing exactly what I wanted them to do. They've grown just a little bit. They've perked up. They were a little bit wilty in here. They seem to be really happy with the amount of water they get, because I have these containers on a drip system. And I think it's going to be something that's going to stay all the way through the fall, and even give us some fall interest, because those colors are not only for summer, but for the fall as well. I was so excited with the way this turned out. And I know in the video when I planted these, I said I was going to plant one this year, but I went ahead and planted another one on the other side of the water feature here. So now I have two of them. And I think the red color with the green evergreen of the shrubs and the grass behind, with the yellow blooms and the purple down here, I think it looks really, really nice. And there's a good amount of contrast, and not everything is flowers. I love coleus, and so I think I'm going to do this more often, to have that little bit of texture difference in the yard. It makes a big difference, and I haven't really done that. And so that's new for me. These down here, let's talk about these two containers. These are the Amethyst Dreams combination from Proven Winners. I picked these up from Lowe's on clearance. I took the tip of one of my viewers and went down on a Friday and found them on 75% off. And they were really, really reasonable. Regular $44.98 or $95 or something like that. And again, picked them up for under, I think, $12. They were $11 after tax. Came through. They were really spindly, just like the other containers that I did a couple weeks ago, where I had brought them home, and I showed you that before and after. If you haven't seen that video, it's really cool to see that. I'll go ahead and link that down below. But this is really exciting, because I had sheared them off completely, gave them a little bit of that water-soluble fertilizer, a little bit of Proven Winners low-release fertilizer, and some plant tone, and a little bit of water, and then left them alone, and this is the result. I mean, they look probably better than they originally did when they came into Lowe's at the beginning of the season. They look fantastic, and I really am impressed with the fact that they're growing pretty much evenly. The varieties that are in this container are the Super Bells Grape Punch, the Superbena I think it's sparkling amethyst, and then the Super Bell's white, which I've never grown before. And so they're doing great, and they're on drip, and so they're always happy. They never completely dry out, and they dry out just enough to keep them happy without getting too waterlogged. Anyways, I love this section of the yard, and I think that this right here, I haven't given you an update on this container. This is the Proven Winners Polar Peach recipe that I had planted up, and just look at how this thing is growing. I mean, you have that double amber, another double Super Bells, love that. You also have the pretty sparkling amethyst verbena here that's kind of like all throughout. If you look, it's right here in the middle of the Super Bells. So it's coming out on this side where you have that Mini Vista Indigo Supertunia. And it's just all around really pretty. More of that combination, all three of those plants on this side, which is neat. This side as well, that indigo is filling in over the top here, and you have that double amber there. Even at the very top, you have a little bit of that double amber. So it's going to be neat to see how this all works out. I don't think I'm going to really help it along. I'm just going to see what happens. But you could come through and take some of the branchings and kind of help it to trail and to cover more evenly. But I just want to kind of see how this all plays out, because for now I think it's really pretty. The colors are so nice, and from afar this amber looks like peach, so it looks a lot softer than when you come closer, although it still is pretty. All right guys, I wanted to show you a really cool find that my wife and I was able to pick up yesterday, actually, at Home Goods. We found these really nice chairs, because the chairs that we had before, they were here for a long time. They looked kind of dingy. They were rotting on the top and split. So we were able to find these really nice chairs to add to our set back here for $15 a chair at Home Goods. And I think it really is nice because it completes the look. They match the glass table. It's not really clean right now. And it goes really well with the color of the cushions here, kind of tying it all together, and they're made so well. They have a steel construction. So if you haven't been to Home Goods in a while, you might want to check, because they were on clearance. I mean, serious clearance, and they're a name brand too. So you couldn't beat that. I mean, if we can find things on clearance, I feel like that is the way to go. So let's go out in the front, and I'll show you a little bit of how things are going there. Okay, I know I've already shared the process that I took to plant this beautiful flower bed up, but I couldn't end our garden video or our garden tour without showing you once again this gorgeous array of color. We have this beautiful pink cashmere verbena. I mean, it is so full of bloom and highly productive, in contrast with the saffron finch supertunias there, and the petite pink gara in between, along with the really nice iceberg roses that bloom 3 to 4 times a year, depending on when they start their bloom cycle. But I am so happy with this. I mean, it's absolutely covered in blooms. One thing that I talk about a lot is having blooms along with structure, and that foundational evergreen structure. And I think the boxwoods really do a great job on both ends of kind of framing in what is happening. This is kind of like the artwork, and the really nice frames that we have here are those boxwoods, and I love how that looks. And I think that when you tidy all of that up and you have all these free blooming plants in the middle along with the green grass, it really does create a welcoming space, and it does make a statement in the front yard for sure. Now this is the most different part of our whole yard, because it gets shade most of the day. There's only one little part of the day where I get some dappled sun, when the sun falls a little bit below the tree canopy at our curb. But it's a really nice spot for sure, because I'm able to grow these beautiful shade or sun-loving plants. And the containers that I have here, I planted up a couple of weeks ago, are doing really well in this spot, and they seem to be really happy with the amount of sun that they get. It's only about 2 hours of sun that these are in full sun, and it's in the early afternoon, but then after that, they're in complete shade. This one, I have the really nice double yellow begonias along with the fern and the creeping jenny, and it's really nice how that turned out on both sides actually. Then I have the surefire white begonias that are in their second season. I sheared them all the way back to the bottom because they were looking pretty tired through the winter, and when it gets colder they don't do very well. Some of the leaves were all burnt and a little bit frayed. So I just gave them a shear back, and I thought, you know what, might as well try and see what happens. Gave them some water soluble fertilizer, a little bit of slow release around each of the root balls, and this is how they have come back. I sheared back the boxwoods, and I just love how you have that structure in comparison to the free form growth habit and how open the white surefire begonias are. I love how that looks. And I also have one that's mirroring it. The container that is up above on the porch is mirroring the look of this whole area, and it gives me some vertical height there. So this flower bed goes around the corner here, and it wraps around our porch, and then I have more of those surefire begonias, and you can get a better view of how that all looks. And I have my white impatiens up there in the pot, and this is about the amount of sun that they get, and they're really happy there. A little note about the impatiens is I realized not to fertilize them. Obviously, they don't need a lot of fertilizer, and when I did fertilize them too much, I got a lot of aphids and actual spider mites. So as soon as I learned to tone down on the fertilizer, knowing now that they don't really need a lot, it's so much better, and they look like that all season long. Great tip for sure. It was all trial and error. I'm glad I figured it out because they look great now. Okay, we're going to end our garden tour on this north-facing side of the house with this beautiful hydrangea in the shot. It's really, really nice this time of year in the early summer to see this thing bloom back here, and not a lot of people can see it, so I wanted to make sure that I featured it in this video. We thank you so much for watching today, and we hope to see you in our next video where we have many more projects coming your way. But until then, thanks again, everybody. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye now.